Chapter 21 of Heat, page 142. Even Manny was speechless for change. Uncle Timo was wearing Poppy's favorite old khaki slacks, the ones Carlos had sent home with Manny the night before, and the kind of black t-shirt their father had always seemed to be wearing when he wasn't driving. Poppy's old pocket watch, the one that had belonged to their grandfather, was attached to the thick chain hanging from Uncle Timo's belt. But it wasn't just the clothes. And just one day Uncle Timo's beard looked as heavy as Poppy's had been the day he died, and he had shaved his head into the dark crew cut Poppy always wore in the summer. Even from where he stood across the room, Michael could see the tattoo on Timo Morales' right forearm of a tacoroco, the national bird of Cuba, the feathers almost as big as the bird itself. Just like Poppy's tattoo, the one he used to joke was better than anything any NBA player had on his arm or leg or even his neck. Michael was wondering if it was real as Uncle Timo walked toward him with his arms stretched wide the way Poppy always did when he came through the door, hugged him close, kissed the side of his face, Michael feeling a familiar scratch of beard that actually made him shiver. I feel like I'm with a ghost, he thought. El ratoncito Miguel, he said. It meant Michael the little mouse. Father was the best Michael could do. He even sounds like him, Michael thought, the words coming out in a husky voice like the low growl of a dog. The accent was perfect. Uncle Timo pulled back now, winking at Michael as he did, saying, Silencio, no hay que gritas, no si ya vaya a despertar. Carlo must have given him Cuban expressions to use whether they made sense or not. If Mr. Gibbs did speak Cuban somehow, he was probably wondering why Michael's father was telling him not to scream and wake up the cat. Uncle Timo turned toward Mr. Gibbs then, right hand extended toward him, saying, How do you do, sir? I am Victor Arrow, and am here to be thanking you so much for taking an interest in my ratancito. Poppy's English, Michael thought was better, had been better, but Mr. Gibbs didn't know that. The two men shook hands. As they did, Mr. Gibbs said, I speak a little Spanish, but not enough to know what that means. From the time he was born and made these little squeaks in his crib, Michael has been my little mouse, Uncle Timo said, even as I watched him grow up and start to throw a baseball like a young Sandy Koufax. He pointed a finger now at the ACS man. You are the right age to have seen the great Koufax. Am I correct, sir? You got me, Mr. Gibbs said. He was my favorite pitcher of all time. I grew up in Brooklyn, but I was one of the kids who kept rooting for the Dodgers after they left for Los Angeles. The way we Cubanos always rooted for our baseball heroes after they started leaving us for America. The two of them standing here and chatting like old friends after knowing each other for, what, 2 minutes? Please have a seat, Mr. Gibbs, Uncle Timo said, gesturing toward the couch. I will take my favorite chair, the one I have not gotten to sit in too much as of lately, in which my sons say should be condemned. He put a little extra accent into the last word, making it come out condemned. Mr. Gibbs took a seat on the couch. Uncle Timo gave Michael a quick wink, as if the two of them were sharing a private joke. And what about you two? Would you care to sit down and join us, Miguelito? Another poppy expression. Or are the two of you just going to stand there like statues in a church? I'm fine, Michael said. I'm good, Manny said. Uncle Timo got right to it with Mr. Gibbs. I'm so sorry, he said, for somehow making you worry that I had abandoned my two boys. I just feel that in my job, Mr. Gibbs said, It's better to be safe than sorry, and believe me, the last thing we want to do at the ACS is to put two more boys in the care of the city. Of course, there was a time, Mr. Gibbs said, when he had over 50,000 children in the system, but over the past several years the number had dropped to under 20,000. Uncle Timo sighed. It is still a big enough crowd to fill the Madison Square Garden. It's why I'd rather be too nosy than not nosy enough, Mr. Gibbs said. If I even get a whiff that two young kids may be living without a parent, no matter how well they think they're doing, it, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't check it out. Uncle Timo's eyes locked on Michael's, the smallest of smiles on his face, as he said, "We are so grateful that an official person like yourself took such an interest in our family, even if it so much hasn't been so much of a family lately." He nodded, as if convincing himself of something, then said, "This is how we hoped America would work. People caring for other people in such a way as this." Even Michael thought he was starting to spread it on a little thick, but he could see there was no stopping him now. "Would anybody like some lemonade?" Michael said. "Manny and I were just going to make some when Mr. Gibbs showed up, weren't we?" Manny said, "Right, lemonade. Boy, I'm thirsty enough to drink a whole pitcher." They walked through the kitchen doors as they heard Mr. Gibbs say, "So, Mr. Arrow." "Call me Victor, please." "So, Victor," Mr. Gibbs said, "tell me about your brother." Michael and Manny were standing just inside the kitchen door. Manny said, "This is so on." Michael Manny's arm with a hand, but a finger to his lips with the other. "Ouch, shh," Manny said. "I was just saying." "You're always just saying," Michael whispered. "I just would appreciate it if you didn't say anything right now." Manny couldn't help himself. "All I was trying to say—" "Manny," Michael said, "just this one time. I don't want you to do play-by-play on your life." They both listened at the door to Uncle Timo, who Michael thought was a clown when he met him, like one of the clowns that used to make him laugh at the famous Havana circus. El Guinol Nasisano. Now he was telling Mr. Gibbs a story that even Michael found himself believing, about an uncle of Michael's that did not exist, about his brother's terrible blood sickness that was so far gone but somehow could not kill him, about the woman his brother had lived with for years in a place called Homestead, Florida. Where was that? Michael wondered to himself. A sweet, beautiful woman that Lewis had hoped to marry once before he took ill. He said that her name was Julia, then actually gave Mr. Gibbs her phone number in case he ever again had concerns about Carlos and Michael and needed to contact him immediately. Michael poked Manny. "Who is Julia? Will you please stop hitting me? Is she real?" "Oh, now I can talk?" Michael just stared at him the way he did in baseball when Manny would be walking out for a chat and Michael would stare back behind the plate. "Julia is the name of an old girlfriend Uncle Timo told us about," Manny said. "The one from the diner theater down there." In the living room, Uncle Timo was saying, "I make a promise to keep my brother, that I will be there for him until the end." "I understand," Mr. Gibbs said. "When I am down there, I am constantly on the phone trying to find someone in Havana who can find a copy of Michael's birth certificate, which somehow has disappeared." There was a pause, and then Uncle Timo said, "Maybe because we disappeared on the boat that night." "It's stupid that Michael even has to be through this, if you want my opinion," Mr. Gibbs said. Next to Michael, Manny said, "Tell me about it." Michael made a motion like he was going to pinch him again. "Don't come any closer," Manny said. He cracked the door open just slightly. Uncle Timo was saying to Mr. Gibbs, "I am the big stupid for making sure I did not have it in my possession before we were saying goodbye to Cuba forever and for good. I told Michael before we got here, and now I'll tell you," Mr. Gibbs said. "If there's anything I can do, let me know." "Maybe if an official person from here called an official person there." I can't make any promises, Mr. Gibbs said, but I'll sure give it a shot. Uncle Timo raised his voice now and said, I thought you two knuckleballs said you were making lemonade. The lemonade, you said the lemonade made already. Coming, Poppy, Manny said. Poppy, Michael said. I want to get into the act. Wow, Michael said. That doesn't sound anything like you. Michael carried the pitcher they had put in the refrigerator. Manny brought 4 glasses of the kind of plastic trays you got from the food at McDonald's. Uncle Timo poured. Like it was some kind of party, he was pouring wine or champagne for his guests. Then he raised his own glass. To my Miguelito, he said, may the next time we are all together be on the day when he pitches himself and his proud Poppy to the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. They all clicked glasses and drank lemonade. Uncle Timo drank his in a long gulps, then made a big show of wiping his mustache with the back of his hand, just the way Poppy used to. Then, as if to overcome by the emotion of the great moment, he spread his arms wide again, motioning Michael to come in to him. My son, he said. He put his arms around Michael and hugged him even tighter than he had when he came in. And then a whispery voice, just barely loud enough for Michael Arrow to hear, he said, Top that, dude.